Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Khoj Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation is Maj Mahalla Panjwa Kartija. Ik Oankar Sadgur Prasad, Maj Mahalla Panjwa Kartija, Har Jap Jape Man Dhire, Rahao. Simar Simar Gurudeo, मिट गए पै दूरे शरण आवे पार ब्रह्म की तां फिर काहे चूरे चरण सेव संत साध के सगल मनोरथ पूरे घट घट एक वर्तदा जल थल महियल पूरे पाप विनाशन सेवया पवित्र संतन की तूरे सब छड़ाई खसम आप हर जपे भई ठौरूरे करते किया तपावसो दुष्ट बुए होए मूरे नानक रत्ता सच नाए हर वेखे सदा हजूरे. This is the last Ashtapadi in Rag Maj, and it is the composition of the fifth Nanak. And at the very outset, the instruction is to settle the mind. Har Jap Jape man Dhire. When the mind recalls the self or understands the self, it will find its composure and settle down. Simar Simar Gurdeo mit gaye pay dure. All fear vanishes, mit gaye pay, and they are kept at bay, dure, by reflection, simmer simmer, on the teachings of the enlightener, Gurudev. So the message in the first two panktis is that an unsettled mind needs to be settled, calmed down, through the instruction of the Guru. Saran aave par brahm ki ta fir kahe chure. So when one takes refuge, saran aave, of the Supreme Creator, par brahm ki, then ta fir, whence, from where, kahe, can grief come, chure. Charan sev sant sadke. Charan sev, feet. What it means is at the feet of the perfect enlightener. In other words, in the presence, under the tutelage, under the supervision of the perfect enlightener. That is what is meant by charan sev. Bring yourself under the tutelage of the perfected master. And then all aspirations and aims will be met. Sagal manorath pure. Ghat ghat ek vartada, jal thal mahiyal pure. And then the recognition dawns that in every heart, in every vessel, meaning this form of body-mind, in every living being, the realization dawns that this oneness, ek, this one essence is present everywhere, in water, jal, on land, thal, and in the space in between, mahiyal. So therefore, paap vinasan sevye, pavitra santan ki ture. Therefore, serve the destroyer of the sin, papa vinasan, and do that in the congregation of the faithful, and then the heart is purified. Purification meaning being devoid of ego. Now, pap vinasan, something to reflect on for a minute. Pap in its broadest sense means to go astray, to deviate from the right path. It is also used for immoral actions, that is to say, to deviate from morality. Thus, pap can be thought of as any action or even thought that violates a particular norm. And in Gurbani, the term pap is used in its wider sense, and that is as not being in harmony with hukam, or in other words, following the dictates of the ego. And so this is a violation of hukam. And it has implications in a moral, societal sense as well, of disturbing or disrupting the social covenant between individuals. Binasan here has an ankar under the nana, which suggests binasan comes from to destroy, to expunge. But the word, because of the vowel sign at the end, renders it a noun. So pap binasan is better understood in this passage as the destroyer of sin, meaning the one that guides us to the right path, the one that takes us away from the wrong path. And a-sabad-a-day khasam ape, Har Jap Jape. So here is an indication that destroyer of sin, or the one that actually brings us onto the right path, is the khasam, the master. A-sabad-a-day khasam ape. It is the master, the creator self itself, who, through its grace, brings us to the right path. And the right path is Har Jap Jape, self-knowledge. That is what causes us to come to the right path. Karte kiya tapavaso dusht mue hoye pure. Karte kiya tapavaso. The Creator is always just, benevolent. So in its benevolence and grace, the perversions of the mind, dusht is evil. So the perversions, the prevarications of the mind, mue, hoe mure, they are rendered useless. In other words, the mind is freed of its prevarications. And then, Nanak ratta sach nae, har vekhya sada hazure. Nanak is soaked, ratta, to be absorbed in the self, and then sees the Har self present everywhere and all times. So this is the nature. The mind in its ego state is afflicted with existential angst. There is this free-floating anxiety and dread that we all experience consciously, subconsciously, and it is dread of loss. And the loss is really related to the loss of this body-mind, attachment to the body. Death is really the primal fear that is always with us, and that is what keeps the mind unsettled. So calming of the mind becomes our chief concern. And Gurbani is very clear in stating that without self-knowledge, it is impossible to soothe the mind. Har Jap Jape man Dhire. Dhire means patience, fortitude, composure. So the mind will not be composed unless it is educated and trained with Gurmat, because Gurmat reveals to the mind its true nature. And once it begins to recognize itself as being that same oneness of the same essence, then what fear or anxiety can cross the mind? Saran aave par brahm ki, ta fir kya chure? So the essence of the message is to compose the mind come under the tutelage of the Guru. Now, with this passage, the Ashtapadi section, Ashtapadi, the an 8-verse composition, which is a literary genre. The Ashtapadi section in Rag Maj comes to a conclusion. And for those of you interested, the numbering scheme is something to really look at. It begins, it says 8.5.39.1.32.1.5.39. It's very interesting. And it begins with the 8, which always indicates the last verse of the current Ashtapadi, because it is 8-versed. It is followed by the number 5, which indicates the 5th Ashtapadi of the current author. And as we noted earlier, the current author is Guru Arjan, the 5th Nanak. 39 is the sum of all the Ashtapadis so far. And then it is totaled again. It is totaled by adding the Ashtapadis of the various authors in the sequence in which they have appeared. And so we know that the structure of Gurbani, it is the first Nanak followed by the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and then the Bhagats. So here you have 1, 32, 1, 5, which is the first Nanak had 1 Ashtapadi, the third Nanak had the bulk of them, 32, the fourth had 1, the fifth had 5, for a total of 39. Now this scheme has proven very effective in preventing spurious insertions and deletions. It's been very effective in maintaining the integrity of the text. So this was just some information that some of you might be interested in or might find useful. On that note, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.